Hi, so today on Turning Points we're going to be looking at the Battle of Waterloo, a famously close battle. The Allied commander, the Duke of Wellington, described it as the closest run thing you ever saw in your life, and it certainly was a close fight. The two sides were fairly evenly matched in terms of numbers, the Allied and the French, and then there was a third Prussian army arriving from the east, which meant that the French had to get their breakthrough on the day before the Prussians arrived. So during the course of the battle, it seesawed either way, but by 7 p.m. in the evening, tens of thousands of men were already dead, and Napoleon knew that he had to get a breakthrough there and then. He was out of time. So he launched his final big attack of his reserves, which were the Imperial Guard, an elite unit which had never been defeated in battle. He brought these up and sent 5 battalions of Imperial Guards up the ridge to attack the centre of the Allied line. The men that they were facing were General Halkett's brigade, and the Imperial Guard split into two groups, 3 battalions one way who actually faced some of the British Guards and some light infantry, and 2 battalions which hit men of General Halkett's brigade. Now you've got to remember that this part of the line had been under fire all day. They'd been in squares much of the day, being attacked relentlessly by cavalry, artillery, infantry. They'd taken huge casualties and were exhausted. And there was Allied officers at the time who said, really, if the French had just kept up at their artillery bombardment for another half an hour, the line would have pretty much just disintegrated there and then. It was that close. It was paper thin at this point. So these 2 battalions are hitting that part of the line. The Allied armies start to fire back, and the French stop and fire. So there's a confused firefight between the two sides, but surely these fresh troops will prevail if this just goes on. And Major Kelly, who's now in charge of the Allied troops in this sector of the battlefield, decides that he needs to pull his men back. They've advanced slightly to meet the French threat, and they've moved forward from a good defensive position, which was a sunken road, basically a ditch. And he thinks he'll pull his men back into the ditch to protect them, a reasonable thing. But as soon as they start to make this tactical withdrawal, the French see it, let out a cheer, redouble their fire, and the English tactical withdrawal starts to turn into a retreat and then a rout. So the line is literally falling apart at this point. And what stops the French capitalizing on that and pushing through the line at this point? They're suddenly attacked by the Prince of Orange. So the Prince of Orange is a 23-year-old commander on the field. He's keen to do something, and he decides to put himself in charge of a battalion of troops and advance and attack this French square. And for a few minutes the French are stunned. They have to deal with this new threat. They're not expecting an attack, but they face the attack, they return fire and beat it back. And the Prince of Orange is wounded, his men start to flee, and they're out of the fight. But he's managed to buy enough time for the Allies to reform their line. They've managed to stop the retreat, pull in any skirmishers, anyone who's around, anyone who's left, and reform a line on top of the ridge. So now when the Imperial Guard advance, they're faced with some stiffer resistance. And this time the Allies wait till they're within a short range, let forward a devastating volley, and this time it's the turn of the Imperial Guard to fall back. And at the same time, a battery of horse artillery has arrived, found a gap and opened fire on this square, and that's enough. The Imperial Guards start to retreat back into the smoke. The Allies are surprised to see this, but sure enough, that's the turning point. Those Imperial Guardsmen retreat all the way down the hill, and as the word spreads in the French army that the Imperial Guard, this elite unit, are retreating, the army starts to retreat, and that turns into a rout, and that's it. The Battle of Waterloo is over, and all down to the Prince of Orange and his madcap charge, which has saved the day.